Hey guys, it's Josh, and welcome back to the Not So Bad Bachelor Pad, your favorite podcast for learning how to balance between being a functional adult and a raging dumpster fire. And let's be honest, some days we're all a bit of a dumpster fire. Welcome back. It's been a little bit of time away, but I haven't forgotten about you, and I'm coming with a super strong episode today. This week, joining us inside the Bachelor Pad is Paul Aaron Travis. Paul, thank you so much for making time for us today. How are you? Where are
I'm
you?
really good. I'm aware of the energies going on between the whole equinox and then also kind of what's going on in our global system, and remembering that the most powerful place that my attention can be is on the places in my life and where I can make things brighter.
No, that's amazing. There's always so much craziness surrounding us almost every second of the day, no matter where you are in the world. So the fact that you just focus on your sphere of influence, the place where you can make things shine just a little bit brighter, is an amazing ideology.
I've had to talk myself into it, and then I see a lot of people around in despair. We were talking about anxiety, and there's a lot of anxiety right now. And to the degree that we can soothe each other, like that's what I talk about in relationships all the time.
You know, so often people don't really realize this. Well, we were talking about this before we started recording, that a lot of people in their relationships, especially romantic relationships, there are so many intangibilities. They feel a sense of attraction or that they're drawn to a person, but they can't understand why. They don't know quite what it is. It's that X factor. And I know it's a while since we talked about that. That was literally the very first episode that ever aired almost 6 years ago, believe it or not. But we were talking about the X factor, and me and DK couldn't come up with solid solution or definition. So hopefully, revisiting today's topic with Paul will shed a little bit of clarity on it.
So, the thing that comes to my mind is that, with 8 billion people on the planet and at least 8 billion different perspectives, no one is going to be right for everybody. And so what I usually talk about is give these ideas a try. And if they feel like they make your life better, they give you more tools to respond to challenging situations or even good situations, then great. But if not, then, let it be, because there's going to be somebody else who has an idea, in that regard. And I know that I always wondered, like, why is it so common to hear about typically a woman who gets out of an abusive relationship and then gets into another one? It's like, shouldn't that be like red flashing light on the dashboard? And what I've come to learn in all the work that I've done and worked with individuals and couples at School for Love and School for Lovers, and then also going through my education and certification as a sex educator, it's that we don't actually fall for the people that we think we do. There's survey research out there that shows that no matter what people have written in their dating profile, they don't always find. I think the data are something like 73% of the time, the match is not what they said they were looking for. And so there's something else. And I believe that kind of, to your point, the X factor is when I get around somebody else, there are, these invisible energy signals. We're electrochemical beings. And so we react to other people and we get a sense of like what kind of energy there is. So those relationships that I talked about, the abusive ones, there's something that hooks usually the woman to get back into something where she's like, it may not be consciously, it may not be good for me, but at an energetic level, at the body's level, like 95% of our life is run by our subconscious. Our subconscious is deeply connected with our lizard brain. And so there's where that energetic match is, and that's a familiar pattern. So that's
I love that, and that's so true. I didn't know anything about that statistic of like 73% of those matches aren't really what people claim in the profile, which I think is funny because when you meet people in the wild, it makes sense that you get attracted to these similar patterns that you always just fall into, something that feels familiar. However, online dating has like shook that whole notion of pheromones, physicality, because now it's marketing yourself. So it's funny that even though all of the natural brain chemicals interactions that we have when meeting people to kind of influence our bad decisions are secondary. We're still falling into those same loops, those same patterns. And that almost begs the question, is dating really broken or is it us?
I think that any tool can be used well, and I think any tool can be used poorly. And truthfully, the School for Love exists because a long time ago I realized there was no education on how to use online dating. And so people just kind of like, if you go out and grab a golf club, you swing it around, like you might hurt yourself or you might hurt somebody else. And so that was the impetus back in 20 to help people who were starting to freak out about this whole COVID social change and how do you date when you can't even see somebody. So it was a personal place where I took my background in human development and all the trainings I had done and applied it in that one area, and it took off, and it was really helpful for many people to say, wait a minute, I actually need a little rules of the road book for like how I should be doing this and not just go get crazy. You know, somebody messages me on Tinder and like 24 hours later, we're having a drink. It's like, wait a minute. We didn't even check to see if like there were some key match factors in there. It's just like, hey, let's go talk to somebody. It's a horribly empty feeling to make all that time and get all the excited about meeting somebody and then realize, oh my God, I didn't actually ask the right questions up front. So now I've got to sit and spend 60 minutes with somebody I don't really even find attractive here in person.
It's so funny you say that because 2020, especially the very, very, very start of COVID, was such an interesting time, and it really showcased how so many people had a sense of abandonment or the importance of social connection and interaction because we were all so depraved. You know, being physically 6 feet away from another person or your set of friends, not being able to see like loved ones because of age, because of different health factors. And so the one thing that didn't really force you to stop connecting were dating apps in a sense. That's why I feel like there was such a boom. I believe that they reported like in 2020, 2021, that apps such as Bumble, Hinge, and Tinder saw close to a 500% spike or increase in usage. I was like, 500% of anything is wild anomaly, but it really just went to show that people didn't care almost who or what it was. They just wanted to connect. And then you're right, you end up in one of those in-person situations where you're like, man, I was just so eager to get out of the house or to meet somebody that I don't even know if I like this person, yet alone could I learn to love them.
Yeah. And so then you fast forward to now and it's like, you know, have not actually heard anybody in the last few years walking around saying, I've got plenty of extra time. I just want to sit and kill time, right? We're all trying to get things done. We're trying to keep on track of everything from our laundry to our taxes to, you know, the work that puts food on the table. And so when we're going out and spending 50, $100 between parking and getting somewhere and a meal and drinks, you know, maybe that estimate's conservative. Anyway, like not just that, but then the time, it's like it makes so much sense, not just from a practicality standpoint, but from a care to myself. Like if
Mm,
I set myself up for a meeting with somebody where there's really very little chance that we're going to hit it off, then I'm kind of like doing myself a disservice. Why not go through? So we have a 4-part model in my book, The Spark You've Been Missing. And this covers platonic relationships as well as dating relationships and existing relationships. And it's about how to get closer to somebody to build more connection because we've got a serious, like an undercurrent in our society right now between loneliness and disconnection and shallowness. These are the 3 things that I call out in the book. People are feeling less grounded, less connected with brothers and sisters, and less connected with our world. It's a scary situation to be in. And so I feel really good about helping people to have some tools to make more meaningful connection in the heart.
amazing. So often I find myself asking this question because I don't know a better way to say it. we know what we want, we know what's good for us, but somehow just watching some of the bachelors out there, the girly pops who tune in, or in my real life, I find that the fake versions tend to win out, even though we preach about how we want actual genuine connection. And I think that goes to your topic of like the shallowness, the lack of connection. Because I don't think people are afraid to commit now. I just think we're not connecting. And so people don't want to commit to a half assed connection.
Yeah, agreed. Well, the model that this book talks about, and frankly that the School for Love is built around, is this one called authintimacy. There's a diagram. I'll just speak to it, and maybe we can. Maybe is it big enough?
Well, that works. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So
We love it.
basically, this model is kind of a living, breathing thing, and that is how much am I being in my true self? Am I being authentic? And the way that I visually show that is like there's this circle that I hold up and I show to others as that's who I am. And then there's this other circle of who I know myself to be. And so basically, when those two are lined up, when there's congruence between who I know myself to be and who I show myself to be, there's magic because I'm willing to be vulnerable. And really I'm speaking my truth and I'm not going along with somebody else because they just happen to be the same political party or the same community, but I'm actually giving my unique perspective. That's an outward bound expression. Then there's the part about coming back around, and that is the intimacy piece. So there's authenticity and intimacy, and I call that authintimacy. And so the latter part, coming back in, is how much am I willing to let others touch me? I mean, emotionally, like how much am I willing to let somebody see the imperfections that I have? And that cycle, that practice of authenticity is something that School for Love students have said is just like such a fundamental model that they can use all the time, whether it's, in their love life, with their family members, even at work, like making sure that I'm not sort of checking out and just playing it safe, but really being willing to be known. And then, of course, there's how much am I telling myself the truth?
No, those are really big points. And I love that you coined that term because I think maybe a few weeks back, we talked about, or I came to the realization that I feel like so many relationships also struggle or can't get off the ground for the solid fact that we give our representative too much autonomy. And what mean by that is how we present ourselves to people when we first meet them sets an expectation, lets us get an idea of what we can build or where this relationship will go. However, if your representative is performing and then at some point you get tired of acting and you drop back into your natural self, your real you, the disparity or the dichotomy between the two, if it's too great, people can't cope with that. And that just leads to a nasty spiral to the end of your relationship.
Well, and I would
But
ask you, what is it that had you choose in the first place to make your representative like bigger?
no, that's a valid question. I tell you guys this. I say learn what makes you weird and lean into it. Because if people can accept you at your kookiest, craziest, quirkiest, then you never really have to put on a face. You never have to don a mask, and you can be consistent throughout your relationships. However, like you said, when you become so big that you lose the person and you're just an ideal, it's really hard to live up to an ideal day in, day out. Like you were saying, is there really even a need to? Sure, we all have a celebrity crush that we think is amazing. However, we don't think in real life that the person that we see on the screens, like the characters, are who they are in their day to day life. Or at least I hope we can like make those different discernments.
I mean, I think that when we're watching a movie, we know that. But like there's a lot of blending now with, user generated content and, people going live. And so I think more and more it does come back to like, wait, what is in here? What do I want to share with somebody? And then to your point, like, am I feeling inadequate? Is that why I want to like make my representative seem bigger? Am I feeling, boring? Like there's something that triggers in us that's like, hey, let's make this thing. And then to your point, like I feel like one of the biggest costs of being inauthentic, like putting on a show, putting on a story, maintaining a lie. Like there's a lot about honesty in my book, and the mental cost of trying to remember who I told lies to, which lies to. For 10 years, I've been like, that is just not something that I can even account for anymore. So I just don't get myself into a situation like that. And frankly, like there are people who say like, okay, I'll be polite and I just won't say anything. But really withholding the truth, the omission is just as bad as a lie. So I would really encourage people to like look into their heart and say, wait, I'm just gonna make a commitment. I'm gonna speak my truth and just know that it's gonna be okay.
For sure. And I actually want to like spend a little bit more time right here in this moment because there are so many dating epidemics right now. But the two biggest ones that have me going up a wall are ghosting and I don't want to say fear. I don't think anxiety is the right word either, but it's just, I don't know what the right word
What's
is.
an example of it?
So many people are, like you said, they omit so much because they don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. However, in this omission, because we all know, we in our head, we know what we're going to do. There are very few times that we actually go back and forth on, do I like this person? Do I not? Do I want to stay? Do I want to leave? Am I attracted? Am I not? Can I do something better? But we're so worried about how we're going to be perceived that what ends up happening is people just turn to ghosting. They're like, hey, if I just stop communicating, I don't have to worry about disappointing a person or hurting them. I can just disappear and it's no longer a thing. But they don't realize the effect that has on people. So it kind of becomes this endless cycle of people abandoning other people, causing, and I think that's why we have such an issue connecting right now because everybody's always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Is this relationship actually going to last more than one or two dates? Are we going to get out of the swiping DM chat phase? Or just one day I wake up and radio silence?
I think it's really sad when people can't. I mean, the thing is, we have not been trained on how to really even say no. Like, there's such an expectation that you put an idea out and the other person goes along with it, or if they don't go along with it, then they're gonna hurt your feelings. Then they're gonna I mean, there's this fear of like, they won't like me anymore, they won't ask me again. I mean, it might even be something I don't ever want to be asked again, but the worst thing to do is just not answer. And so that goes along with ghosting. I think that there's an old adage about the opposite of love is not anger. The opposite of love is indifference. Like
Right.
not even hearing back from somebody sucks. And for anybody who's ever been in a place of saying, like, I don't really want to answer this person. I don't want to keep going, but I know they're going to keep messaging me. I mean, a really polite thing to do is say, hey, I don't think this is a good fit for me right now. I wish you all the best. Like even sticking in a little compliment, like you have a great laugh. Thank you. I'm glad our paths crossed. I'm done. Over and out is so much better than leaving the other person wondering. And then from a karmic perspective, you got to believe that that's going to come back, that
Right.
somebody's not going to, leave you in a lurch.
For sure. And I tell people sometimes the biggest disservice that you can do to somebody is think that you're being kind because it just letting them know, hey, I had fun. The moment we had was the moment. I don't that at this current time I'm ready for another one or interested in another one or however you want to phrase it. But that's so much better than leaving what if. And then having that person, this is a whole nother layer is you don't get the closure and then the person pops back up every couple months, maybe reconnect. The emotional baggage and damage that that does to a person is unbelievably astronomical because we have this thing. People they love to show up as themselves. They love to be genuine. They love. They want to be open. They want to connect. However, we're also really retaliatory. This was something I've noticed. And what I mean by that is I'm open, I get rejected, or you get done dirty. then the next person that you meet, you do them dirty because they were open and connective. And so
Mm.
it's this thing. And so then you're like, why is every time I enter into a relationship, every time I'm ready to actually settle down and commit, that I'm faced with this devastating blow?
That's sad. I'm sorry to hear that. And I get what you mean about retaliation. It's just that it's an indirect retaliation because
Right.
it's like paying it forward to somebody else on a bad way, which
Yeah.
is antithetical to the idea of paying it forward. But yeah, I hear you. I mean, I think what you're getting at really speaks, Joshua, to the idea of, you know, I didn't grow up really knowing about, but like there is an incredible amount that our society knows about trauma now, and the School for Love is definitely trauma informed. Like understanding that people have, kind of ouchies, they have serious stuff they've been through, and they're still healing from it. I mean, almost everybody. It'd be nice if we were all mostly done, but we're mostly starting. So, when you talk about that, I think like, yeah, what simple tool can get us out of that, like, you know, indirect retaliation thing? And I got to come back to that whole thing of, authintimacy, because it's about like, how am I showing up? Am I speaking to this person as though I want to create an invitation to let's co-create, let's play, let's sing together, let's go see movies, let's dance, and all of the things that people want to do. Some people want to sit down and make paper mache art, and other people want to like just be on the couch and watch a movie. Whatever, there are people out there who want to do the same kind of things that you want to do, but finding that, like you said, that X factor, that chemistry, that takes, I think, a lot of inward investigation. And these are things that exercises that we do at School for Love. Like, what are the unifying characteristics? What is all the set of like the best experiences that I've had in relationship? We can get in, you know, 6, 8, 10, a dozen, 20 of those, and write them down on paper and feel what those things felt like, different partners, different times of our lives, and then look at like, what are the red flags? What are the things that I should know about? Because very often the subconscious is not going to be reading that list. And so we can be kind of doing this exercise to check in with what our true desires are, and then how's our brain looking at it. And one of the great things in the School for Love is there's kind of checking in with a dating coach to see like, what's going on this week, and who's lit your fire, and then what kind of good questions are you asking to kind of weed out people who really aren't in it for the same values or the same kind of time frame. And those are the conscious things that I think we can do to put ourselves in a better place rather than getting knocked around like that little shiny ball in the pinball machine and bounced off because this person said no thank you, and this person ghosted me, and like, you know feeling
Yeah.
like a little bit more control over the whole situation, some more confidence.
For sure. The emotional roller coaster is addicting. We love the highs, we hate the lows, but we have such a struggle getting off of that. But when we do, it's good. I always tell us you need to take 5, 10 minutes a month to periodically do those self check ins, like you were talking about as a school, because everybody has a game plan until they get punched in the face. That's the saying. And relationships, love is no different. If you are not actually practicing what you expect, what you want, what you're looking for, the minute you get any attention, that pop in the face, you're just gonna go with it. And then one day you're gonna wake up and you're like, brother, I'm back exactly where I started. It makes me think that, hey, let's spend some time not just refocusing, redefining what we're looking for, hoping for in a relationship, but what are we missing at the start? So many people say we just had the spark, but what are we missing searching for the spark, the infamous spark?
Well, the spark is the subject of the book. So the spark you're talking about may be more dating related, but I feel like what is common to these different groups that I mentioned, that is family and lovers and platonic friends, coworkers, is this feeling of I matter.
Mhm.
That I'm not just like sitting here as customer number 343,000 at Starbucks. That we're actually having a meaningful conversation. And I remember reading a book years and years ago about this dynamic that you could have. It was a fascinating idea that you could have a conversation with somebody in the span of an elevator ride that would be more profound than with a friend of 20 years. And I thought, that's totally true for me. Like, there are people that I can just get into conversation and be unguarded and really like hear each other. And that feels so, connecting. That feels like the spark. So then if I can have that with my sibling and be like, wow, I really see your pain, right? Yeah, with on a date, like that's worth working for, in my opinion. And so, you said 10 or 15 minutes a month. Like, I think, we work on it for a few hours, rewrite some of the dating rules so that people are saying, wait, I know what I've done before. I'm not doing that. I've got better things. I want to vibrate at a whole new level.
I guess it's been a minute since I've talked about it, but early on in the show, if you guys have been here since day one, you know this to me. I love using the term relationship, but I don't use it interchangeably with romance because I think all relationships are super pivotal to your day to day life and they domino into each other. If you have a healthy work relationship, familial relationship, platonic relationship, then those trends are going to translate to your romantic life as well. You're going to keep finding nourishing, healthy relationships. But if your whole ecosystem is in disarray and very volatile, you're going to end up in a potentially toxic situation in one of those categories because it gives you a sense of quote unquote normalcy. And I like to like veer away from that. But I think in my personal life right now, I think my romantic life is more lax in the requirements and restrictions than familial or platonic because listen, I could be wrong. You could disagree with me, but I think friendship breakups are way harder than romantic breakups 90% of the time. And that's because you can be a more authentic self sometimes, or that's what you expect from a friend or even a best friend. You have that high level of also intimacy, because you're confiding in each other. You're checking on each other your day to day. You're making memories that are supposed to last a lifetime without the physicality. Sometimes I feel like that's the cheat code in romance is we add in physicality and it makes up where it's supposed to be patchwork for the lack of connection that you have with your friends, with your family, with your siblings.
I can see that. Yeah. I mean, I definitely think you are onto something there with the difficulty of breaking up with a friend. And I know that what I've seen and the research that went into this book is that there's a cost to us of having the three scourges that I talk about, the scourge of loneliness, disconnection, and shallowness. And each of those has this way of feeling like fast food or, like TV dinners or something. It kind of hints at the right thing, but it doesn't actually feel fulfilling. It doesn't feel nourishing. And so that like continually being in a situation where we're like not quite getting met, we're not quite feeling like our friend is actually being open to us. There are things that we can do. I talk about this in the book, like to say, hey, I'd like to have a deeper connection with you. Are you open to sharing, XYZ? Maybe it's about, their ailing mother, or maybe it's about like my pending divorce or something. Like, can we talk about something meaningful? I think on the other side of that is in a very parallel way with dating is to say, hey, I'm open to having a few more friends in my life, right? A couple of my friends have moved away or something took them out of my sphere. So they're still around, but they don't really want to hang out with me anymore. And over time, we lose these friends and we kind of have to realize the same things that go into dating go into replenishing our friends so that we have that social community. That is a huge piece. And I appreciate your sharing with folks the power of that.
For sure. And it's so sad that I think across the board in most cultures, we put such a value on education, yet it's only academic education. It's never real life. It's never emotional education. You can have one of the highest IQs around, but your EQ is so low. And that's awful. It's doing such a disservice because realistically connecting, harmonizing with your fellow person will lead to a whole new world of discovery that the binary world can just never understand.
I I get that. I appreciate that perspective because I think there's been so many places in my life where I realize, we grow up and we're taught the world is binary. It's totally not binary. Whether it's gender or race, there's just so much where the magic and the richness of all the colors make things like fun and make them enjoyable as opposed to just to look at what's happening in our political system.
Right. When you paint things black and white, like, sure, we love a good monochromatic piece, but the breadth of variety of color just opens you up. It literally warms you up to so many more emotions, like the complexity, the nuances. So I'm glad that people like you are taking the time to help people connect with themselves and raise their EQs. But speaking of people like you, authors are, I say this, they're some of my favorite people because I don't think that you woke up one day and a light bulb came on that says, I need to write a book. I could be wrong, but can you kind of walk me back a little bit and what led you to realize that, "Hey, I might need to share this with more than just my immediate group? This is a concept. This is something that needs to be out there."
Well, for me, I mentioned to you that I had started teaching dating classes. And in the course of each week, meeting with people and hearing challenges, I was like, okay, here's some in building my own kind of models of what tools that people could use. I mean, it just outgrew the class. And so I realized there's some people who are not going to be able to afford to take a program and really not interested in it. They just want to like a book that'll kind of get them turned around. And what I've always found is, and I don't know if you know this data point, but something like 95% of all books that are purchased are never actually thoroughly read. You know, there's a lot of starting on chapter one, but get into chapter 10 or 20, it's very rare to have them
No, that's
finished.
real.
And so as part of my launching this book, I also launched a program for people to discuss. On a weekly basis, we get together and we use some of the tools in the book. And then there's some other tools that I bring in so that people have like a live playground to actually practice being more vulnerable and connecting with others in a safe environment so that when they go into their life, they're like, okay, I'm not doing it for the first time. So I'm kind of answering your question, but also sort of giving the bigger picture of like, what is it that I felt would be a service? Because, I've had lots of different aspects of my career. And I feel like the thing that is common to all of these chapters is like, where am I able to help somebody have better luck than they've had? Maybe like some of my pain. Like this is when I was interviewed about my divorce, I was like, I hope that my transformation and how I went through it helps model for others, like how to experience something in a way that is less chaotic and devastating than it would be otherwise.
That's such a valuable thing that people take for granted. My oldest brother says, I bump my head so you don't have to bump your head in the same spot. The perspective, the experience that you gain from going through a situation, regardless of age, class, background, whatever, I think it's valuable that we listen to that. So many people believe that they can only gain experience or they should only be listening to this one type of person. But realistically, there are a lot of young people who have gone through really tough times or they have experienced amazing success, but we want to write it off because of youth. And there are a lot of older people who have stuck to the status quo their whole life and haven't really tested any box. So just because this person is older doesn't mean they've lived a full life and that they have all these gems that they can teach you to help navigate through life. Sometimes it's the young person who always said yes or, was hidden in the corner that we never noticed that has this untapped wealth of knowledge that really could be the key to helping us reach that next level, becoming 1% better, which is everybody inside the Bachelor Pad's goal is to be at least 1% better than we were yesterday.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
I totally appreciate the goodness that you're bringing to the Bachelor Pad.
So this is a little tangent. You'll learn I'm the king of tangents. It's a
I didn't
title
know
that
there
I
was royalty involved, but all
yeah,
right.
was like, not the Duke, no, not the Baron, the King of Champions. No, but that's one of the founding principles of our show is I realize this. Everybody always used to say, "It's not you, it's me." And COVID actually gave me the time and the space to realize I am a bit problematic at times, and I do need to work on my self development if I want to be a great partner, if I want to be a good dad, because I was listening to all my like girlfriends tell me about their dating stories, or everybody was like, "Oh, like, can I just get your guy's perspective?" And then I was talking to them and just having these conversations. I realized I was like, "Guys, sometimes we are kind of pieces of crap. Like, we can do better, we can be better." But also, I think there's this huge ravine of man brain versus woman brain, and we're misunderstanding each other. I don't think we intentionally try to hurt each other. I just don't think we understand each other. So and that's kind of how I modeled the show is how can I give the other perspective so that men can become better partners and that women could feel a sense of comfort knowing that their partner may not be vocal, but they are still present and invested into their relationships.
I totally appreciate that. I think that's one of the reasons why, contrary to some other people in the dating space who just focus on men or just focus on women, I feel like a blended environment, gender preference, gender identity, like we all learn better when we're hearing the stories of others because more often than not, they're similar than they are different. I mean, it's been fascinating going through my uh, sex education certification program because homology is something I was completely unaware of. And that homology means sameness of the body. And so it's fascinating to think about. Like, I know it was totally an eye opener for me, but every penis grows from a clitoris. Like, we think, oh, we're so different, but actually, all of those tissue, they either kind of go one direction or another based on hormones. And that's like a good reminder that there's a lot of places where we're more similar than we are different.
That's what I'm saying. Is like all made of 46 chromosomes. Like we don't have a gender, or we are the same gender for like the first 8 to 16 weeks. I would say let's go back to our primordial form because that's when we were, same, but different, as everybody says now. Now, this next question, bringing it back in, is something I love asking to people who spend so much time thinking, being creative, and developing not just a program, but really an ideology that goes out to the masses. Your book is kind of like your baby. I would never ask you to pick which child's your favorite, but I will ask you, is there a certain part of the book that resonated with you more that you feel is such a strong principle that if we read nothing else, this is something that we should focus on?
Hmm. I think, the framework, the authentimacy framework that I described before is it. I actually had somebody read this and say, like, you should do a master's project on that. I'm like, maybe that's in my cards. I don't know. But I feel like just so many stories and kind of molding this together and I'll actually go ahead and read the parts that I think were too small to see there. But authenticity is saying what you feel, not what sounds good, disregarding image and pretense, and owning your truth with integrity. And intimacy is creating space to be genuinely supported, trusting someone with your unpolished self, and allowing others' love and care in. And then the blend, authenticity, is the antidote to feeling alone inside relationships. The courage of vulnerability, being real and receiving love, known, seen, and still chosen. I think those are like meaningful to most people that I cross paths with. And so if this $10 book is helpful in that regard, or audiobook or the ebook, then I'll feel like that was this was a podcast worth having.
For sure. And guys, I know that you're trying to figure out how you're going to be 1% better tomorrow. Well, Paul made it easy for you. you're gonna go probably to Amazon, or where else can we find the book? Where's the book you usually sold?
School for Love. Schoolforlove.com.
Schoolforlove.com. And you're gonna make this, it's not even a small investment. It's not a big ask for you, but it's an investment that will continue to pay off, not just in your love life, but every aspect of your life. How could you not want to invest in all aspects of your life? But before we wrap up, Paul, this is a question that I think you're the first person I'm asking this, at least on the show. I've been spending a lot of time going back over. I'm always learning, always getting a new certification, because you can never have too much of a comprehensive view of the world, of the human body, of the mind, the heart. So one of the big things I'm focusing on right now, I've shifted into like couples work, and I'm learning about loneliness. So often it has such a derogatory kind of denotation to it. But when you hear the word loneliness, what do you think?
I think of somebody who, so I distinguish between being alone and loneliness, where being alone is being not in the company of others. Whereas I think of lonely, and speak about this in the book, as being something where there's actually a yearning to be with others, but there's something blocking it. It's either socioeconomic conditions, it's, psychology, logistics. Maybe I'm out in the middle of nowhere doing a botanical research project and I just wish I were back home with my family. But there's a lot of people who live by themselves or even live, with somebody else, and they're still lonely. They're feeling like they're not seen and known and respected.
I love that perspective on it, because every word really does mean something different to everybody. And there is a distinction between being alone and loneliness. I completely agree with that. However, somebody told me this and it kind of shook me to my foundational beliefs. They said, I love being lonely because it allows me the opportunity to grow. Sometimes, even when we're alone, we're so preoccupied with our thoughts of connecting or what are we going to do next, that we end up just treading water. However, when we're in that state of loneliness where we're craving that connection, we start to reevaluate ourselves. And in that moment where we're reevaluating ourselves, I do believe there's a lot of potential for us to grow. When we're surrounded by people, we get comfortable, we get complacent. We don't want to change too much because whatever we're doing is working. However, when we're lonely, if we take the time to be self reflective, like we talked about earlier in the episode, there really is an opportunity for us not just to find another situation where we could hit a group think moment or just get complacent again, but really better ourselves, learn a new skill, learn a new hobby, learn or just admit what we're actually looking for. Because sometimes that's a big thing, admitting it to ourselves that, hey, maybe I don't want to be in a long term committed relationship, or maybe I thought I wanted this, but I really want this. I feel like these big moments happen more when we're lonely looking to find something new rather than when we're either by ourselves or just complacent with those around us.
It's an interesting idea. Totally see that.
Well, Paul, like I said, thank you so much for hanging out with us today.
Absolutely.
Hopefully, people who listened really took, if anything else, that it's okay to be your authentic, weird, cookie crazy self and share that with others, because who knows, that might let them know that it's okay to be themselves and that you form a deeper connection, whether that's romantically, platonically, physically, emotionally. All of these aspects matter, and one isn't necessarily more important than the other. No relationship of any kind sustains without all of them. So, like I said, thank you for sharing this bit of wisdom.
Very nice talking.
Everybody is going to go check out schoolforlove.com to get their copy of the book, to maybe take a class if you are really wanting to do a lot more of that intrinsic work and be more than 1% better. Maybe you'll take a leap and become 5, 10, 15% better than you were yesterday, with other like minded individuals. Any last minute words of wisdom? What does the rest of 2026 look like for you?
Well, the rest of 2026 is pretty exciting. I've got some more projects coming up. They'll all be on School for Love. I also wanted to mention that for people who aren't ready to buy the book, there is a free diagnostic quiz, so you can kind of get a sense of where you land on the authenticity quadrant, as I call them.
We love free. So
Yeah,
listen, low commitment, low investment, guys. Scoot over there.
great hanging out with you, Jeff.
You too. All right, guys. I will see all you amazing bachelors, bachelorettes, and partner people next week for another amazing episode of the Not So Bad Bachelor Pad. Until then, remember, it's okay just to be you, whether that's a dumpster fire or not. See you guys.